Hello, this is Angela with Parker's Permaculture, sitting in the backyard of my Portland, Oregon permaculture garden in Zone 8B, and it is a very hot afternoon. I'm hanging out with the ducks and chickens and turkeys in the shade under my hazelnut tree. And I wanted to take a few moments because I have gotten so many requests the last few months to talk about how I incorporate my 2 standard poodles into my permaculture design. So integrating dogs and gardens can be really tricky. And so I thought I would talk about what works for me, setting realistic expectations, and some areas of frustration and or improvement. Now, I have 2 rescue standard poodles. They are almost 9 years old now. We've always had standard poodles. Poodles, if you don't know, are a waterfowl retriever breed. That means they have an incredibly strong instinct to catch birds and bring them back to you. The crows love to taunt Apollo because I think that they know this about him. But it also means that my ducks and chickens and turkeys cannot be in the same space as my dogs. So my number 1 strategy for incorporating dogs into my permaculture garden is good fencing. Not only does the fencing keep my poultry from accessing parts of the garden I don't want them in, but it keeps them safe from the dogs. I cannot ask my dogs to overcome 2 centuries of breeding in that instinct to see a bird, hone in on it, catch it, and bring it back to me. That's not fair to ask them to overcome that. I've seen in many homesteading groups where folks lament that their Labrador or whatever other retriever breed or hunting breed has killed a bunch of their poultry or has caught one of their chickens and brought it back dead to the house. And then they talk about shock collars or really other stringent training regimens that they want to employ for their dogs. And I'm just thinking, don't use that breed in your garden. Either create safe spaces for your poultry with good fencing, monitor your dogs, or get a different breed of dog. Don't ask your dog to deny what they have bred into them, what they feel is their job that they're supposed to be carrying out. Don't ask them to do that. That's not fair of us. So instead, I use really good fences that my dogs can't get through. Second thing that I do, and that I've gotten a lot of questions about, is what do you do with dog poop? So this is like a little bit of a mixed question. I don't have a good answer to it. So our dogs are on heartworm medication. And so that's an insecticide. Now, for me, we didn't used to have heartworm in Oregon, but warming climate and mosquitoes that carry heartworm are more prevalent here. And so there is, about a 1% to 2% risk of your dog getting heartworm if they're not on medication. And that is not acceptable for me because the treatment for it is it's painful and very expensive, and I feel that as a responsible dog owner, I can't risk my dogs suffering in that way. And so they're on heartworm medication, but it's passed through their system. So how do I feel about composting something that has insecticide? I don't know enough about the medications that they're ingesting to know what the half-life is, how it breaks down in the soil, how it interacts with the invertebrate life in the soil. So those are questions I don't have a great answer to. Traditionally, I would have said, we don't use any flea meds or anything like that because I don't have any fleas in my garden, knock on wood. So traditionally, I would have composted my dog's manure under my fruit trees. Pull back the mulch, put the dog manure down, push the mulch back, it breaks down very quickly. Obviously, I would never use dog manure in my annual veggie beds. I would only use it in parts of the garden with ornamentals or under fruit trees, where it can be returned to the soil. But now I've been thinking more and more, like, what is the data on if you have a dog that is on heartworm medication? What does that mean for how you can recycle that waste into a resource? So I need to do more research. If you know the answer, please share in the comments. I would love to hear it because I just want to be responsible with what I'm doing with their waste, right? I'm not going to bag it up and put it in the garbage. So what is the best way to safely return it to the earth? The next thing is, how do you keep your dogs from damaging your plants? Well, that's a really good question. My dogs are very well behaved and they like to use the paths. I think it's probably more especially for Athena that she's a little bit of a diva and doesn't like walking in the beds themselves or getting tangled up in the vegetation. So she tends to use the bathroom in the path, which makes it very easy to clean up. Apollo is a different matter entirely. He's kind of a big lumbering oaf, and he has broken some branches on my raspberries, and he has done things like pee on plants that I really like, including my favorite oriental poppy this spring, and killed it. Boy dog pee is so freaking strong, and he will just burn a plant to death. So I have to watch him, especially in the rain garden, and encourage him to go pee somewhere that's not directly on top of a plant. To me, I feel like that loss is an acceptable loss in the garden to have my dogs. And so I let them wander in all of the unfenced parts of the garden, knowing that occasionally I might lose a plant that he pees on, or that he might break a branch off of something. That feels acceptable. It may not feel acceptable to your garden. If you have a dog who digs, or you have a dog that doesn't respect the paths and likes to go in all of the beds, I don't have a great solution for you other than increased fencing and maybe creating a dog yard. I don't have dogs that do either of those things, so I've not had to design in that way myself. Folks ask, what about if your dogs eat things out of your garden? Do you worry about that? Well, my poodles are very picky eaters. Poodles are known for being dainty and not overeating and being picky. When we first got our dogs, actually Athena still, if you drop something off your plate or off the counter onto the floor, she won't eat it off the floor. She's definitely not gonna eat crap out of my garden, no matter what it is. Apollo, on the other hand, he will try and nibble at a few things. I'm just conscious of the places that I grow plants that potentially have poisonous foliage, and he doesn't ever actually ingest enough of anything that I'm worried. So for us, again, that's not been an issue. I would once again say fences are your friend. Designing with plants that you know are toxic, like perhaps you're growing digitalis or something. I avoid growing really toxic plants like monkshood or yew berries or things like that. I avoid growing those in my garden altogether because I've got kids and poultry. But if you have them, consider putting them in a part of your garden that's inaccessible to your dogs. Now, I use my dogs as a resource in one main way, which is that because they're poodles and because they don't shed, I have to clip them every 6 weeks. Poodle hair is very rich in nitrogen and a great slug-resistant mulch in the garden. So when I clip my dogs, you may come to my garden and see piles of black hair around the base of plants that are prone to slug predation or that need perhaps extra nitrogen, need that extra mulch. It's a really great resource to use in my garden. You can use wool if you don't have access to dog hair, but for me, that's one way, one small but significant way that I can turn my pets into their waste product into yet another resource for my garden. My neighbor's chickens are laying eggs. So I hope this video was helpful. If you have more questions or more insight or thoughts about how you've incorporated dogs into your permaculture garden, particularly if it's like an urban permaculture garden where you don't have great expanses for your dogs to roam, I'd love to hear about that. Since we don't have great expanses for my dogs to roam, we take them on hikes with us. We take them places where we can give them a long, lengthy walk and help them get all of their energy out. If we had a larger property, I would probably have them be loose. The folks who owned them before us, they were basically kept outdoors and not allowed in the house on a 2-acre property, and they frequently escaped. And for me, they're not outdoor dogs, but I know they enjoy the outdoors, even though they sleep in my bed, and they also very much love and enjoy lounging in front of the air conditioner. They also love going on hikes and spending a lot of time outdoors. So we make sure to give them those opportunities if they can't get it right in our own backyard. Please check out my Patreon down below and consider clicking like and subscribe, and I'll be back very soon. Bye.